I love this subject. It is what I actually built this company around, but it's not always the most commonly understood. So I'm excited to dig in. Omar, welcome to Impact Healthcare. If you could give us an introduction of you and your great company, that'd be a great place to start.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lester. My name is Omar Arif. I'm the Senior Vice President of Growth for a company called ClaimDoc. ClaimDoc is a reference-based pricing organization based out of West Des Moines, Iowa. About 160-ish employees, family owned. We've been in operation for about 12 years now. And, I call us a one-trick pony, but our trick is pretty good.
So, Omar, I tend to feel that anybody who wakes up every day wanting to be a salmon and swimming the opposite direction than the entire other industry typically has a why or some sort of fired up story. What's yours? What gets you out of bed to purposefully beat your head up against the wall, trying to convince the rest of the world that the world is round when they think that the world is flat at times?
Oh man, that's a good question and a tough one. I've always been a contrarian type of thinker, and so going against the grain has just been easy for me. My wife often gets annoyed by it, but it's just the way I am. I ask questions. I poke the bear. It's just who I am. It's sort of built into my nature. And being in benefits for, gosh, 16 years now, I've kind of always worked for, smaller organizations that did some unique things, and I think, just as a salesperson, it helps you differentiate when you've got something a little bit quirky, a little bit different. It's not the same story that everybody else is telling, and so that's kinda how I stumbled into RBP and loved it, and, really love the organization I work for today, so here we are.
Awesome, awesome. So one quick tidbit. I see you got Hawaii, floating out there behind you. I need to get you a little Puerto Rico thing over there because there's floating in the Caribbean over there on your left hand side. So we need to get that there. But reference based pricing (RBP). Some people consider it heaven. People consider it Hades. Let's first start because I hate it when people can't even define it. So let's just go and start the 101. Reference-based pricing, what is it?
Yeah, another tough question but a good one. Depending on my mood or what day of the week it is, I tend to define it a little bit differently every day. But when you boil it down, the reference-based pricing piece is just a pricing component for how you pay claims. So people say RBP plans. There really is no such thing as an RBP plan. There's a self-funded health plan, and reference-based pricing is one of the mechanisms to pay claims. It could be the only mechanism. It could be one of numerous mechanisms to pay claims. Um, every single PPO plan has RBP baked into it. And what I mean by that is physicians get paid Medicare plus a markup on traditional Blue Cross plans, on traditional United plans. And so RBP is everywhere. In the context of what ClaimDoc does, we do RBP as a mechanism to replace a managed care network. So all of the things needed to pull Blue Cross and Blue Shield off of an ID card and replace it with ClaimDoc, we do all of those things in house. So it's not just the reference-based pricing piece, it's also the member advocacy piece, the education, the communication to members, the auditing of bills, the co-fiduciary piece that we take to make sure that plan members are protected. Really, all of the things you need to do to implement that change management, ClaimDoc performs those things. And so when I talk about RBP, I talk about it because that's a term that everybody knows. But really, what ClaimDoc does is we do network replacement. We help you get out of the traditional PPO or HMO model and into a model that's going to drive better results financially for your organization and for the people on your health plan.
So I
How's
wanna
that?
make
How's that for an answer, by the way? Is that an
it
easy
it
answer?
it's good. I'm gonna summarize it in kind of the compare contrast. Reference-based pricing is simply trying to come up with what is the reimbursement for a service that's being provided. So let's just take a knee surgery. Right now, if somebody who's listening to this is using a more traditional model, a normal PPO Buka network, there is a build charge. There's a discount applied to a build charge, and that is coming up to, hey, how much do we have to pay for that knee surgery? In a reference-based pricing model, we're trying to come up with what are we paying for the knee surgery, but instead of going top and then coming down, we're starting with Medicare as the basis point and then paying some percentage above Medicare. But either way, in both models, we are simply coming up with what are we reimbursing for that knee surgery? Is that a fair way of kind of summarizing that?
Yeah, I think so. Another way of saying it is we claim doc along with the plan sponsor become dictators of what's fair and reasonable pricing to the healthcare providers. And so, we do a lot of things around that. Yeah.
So I want to hit on because you said a couple keywords, and I want to talk about all of them. I want to talk about advocacy. I want to talk about communication education. I want to talk about claims audit, and I want to talk about the F word, fiduciary. But in this scenario, at the end of the rainbow, right? Whether somebody has done this or not, there n automatically comes this feeling when you say RBP, right? Like, it's like, for the most part, but it's, I think, full of a bunch of misconceptions. So I kinda wanna hit on, like, when you hear the negative and the noise, and it's hard, and it's confusing, and blah, blah, blah. Let's just start with that. Like, where is the basis of that? And is that just simply the old models of this and like the way we get into this new model not eliminates, but like I want to start off with like let's address the elephant in the room because no one's going to be able to hear past the true education if we don't just address the elephant in the room, which is this isn't that scary. The industry has made it a lot more scary, and there's a lot of people that make a lot of money to make it seem a lot more scary. So let's just talk about that. Why is it so scary for some?
Um, because it is a big organizational change, and if you don't implement the right workflow processes to get that change done effectively, it can go sideways. And we're not perfect either. We've had deals go sideways, as every organization has. It doesn't matter if it's an RBP company or if it's United Healthcare. I think some of the stigma of RBP in the broker community exists because of some of the early stages of things that went on with various vendors, either litigious situations with a hospital or a repricer that didn't come in and do any sort of advocacy or education up front. They just slam something in to sell something, and if you don't educate the organization, the client, and the members of the plan thoroughly, it can go poorly. And I've seen it happen on other groups with other vendors, and it's also happened on some of my groups. If we don't get access to HR and the rank and file employees that are going to actually be on the plan, there are a lot of things we do to ensure that it doesn't go sideways that some others don't do. Um, but yeah, I mean the anytime there's change, there's gonna be challenges. You're not gonna save a health plan 20 to 40, sometimes 50%. You're not gonna save them that kind of money without having some sort of disruption. And so, we tell our clients to be ready for some of it, and here's how you handle it, and here's how we work through some of these challenges. We've done this, so we've got answers for any type of challenge that's gonna pop up. But it's just a matter of, not just educating, but just reminding, like, here's what we told you. Here's what's going to happen. This will happen. We will get over it. We will fix it. It's just a constant drip of making sure we're doing the proper communication and education.
I liken this part of the conversation to like you working out, right? Like you don't get a six pack eating Twinkies, right? So like if I want to continue to have poor results, double digit rate increases since the existence of health insurance, I continue doing the same things, right? If I'm trying to get a six pack, I stop eating Twinkies or I navigate to a different type of plan. So I want to start with like one of the biggest values of reference-based pricing is we throw away this whole network idea, right? We can literally go do anything. So let's talk about the fundamentals. That one of the biggest values of reference-based pricing is that lack of restriction of, oh, you got to stay in network, you got to do this. Talk to me about that and some of the things that you guys do to support the member in being able to make sure that Dr. Jones is going to be someone that they can go see tomorrow if they want to continue to see Dr. Jones.
Yeah. So one of the biggest components of working with us is that you can create infinite amounts of customization within your plan. There's no restrictions on that. And so that makes it beautiful because you can implement various DPC practices or different wellness initiatives, whatever is important to your organization, we can implement in our plan. And then as far as helping plan members get access to care when they're leaving, a traditional national network and going on to nothing, right? There's no network attached to it. We have a program that we call Pave the Way, which is uh, proactive outreaches that we make to the providers in the community that the members already see. So, for lack of a better term, think of it like building a custom network for every new group we bring on the books. So we'll take that information from utilization reports we get from the consultant, but then also we give the members during open enrollment and throughout the plan year to engage with our member advocates so they can call us and say, "Hey, look, I've been seeing Dr. Jones for 12 years and I want to make sure that Dr. Jones is going to accept this new plan." Well, we will actually call Dr. Jones and say, "Hey, Dr. Jones, Lester is coming off of Blue Cross's plan and onto our Claim Doc open access plan. Here's how we're going to pay you. Here's how quickly we're going to pay you. Here's what the ID card looks like. Here's how you file a claim with the plan. Will you accept Lester and charge him his $25 copay like you've been doing and file a claim with us?" Yeah. Okay, great. When we do that proactive outreach and include the doctor in the plan, we get like a 95% acceptance rate with physicians across the country. I mean, it's astounding. And that quiets a bunch of the confusion, the noise. It helps the member get access to care. It lowers our balance bill rates. It does so much for the sustainability of the plan and the transition from PPO to RBP. It's it's a lot of work on our staff, but we have to do it.
So automatically up at the front, it's funny because I think about open enrollment meetings, right? And like people can't even listen to you until you tell them a couple things, right? Is Dr. Jones in the network and how much they're paying out of their paycheck, right? Like you got to just hit that up front because they're not going to listen to it. So automatically, standing in front of all the employees in the open enrollment meeting, you are able to say, we're not taking Dr. Jones away from you. In fact, we just need you to nominate all of your Dr. Joneses, and somebody from the Claim Doc team will reach out to Dr. Jones and say, hey, here's what's going on. You cool with that? And what you're saying is 95% Dr. Jones heard what the program is going to be and says, yep, cool.
That's correct. And even in that 5% where the physician
That's what I
says no,
so good that
it could be it could be a chiropractor that doesn't take insurance. It could be, people send us their dentist sometimes. So we're talking about 5%, and that includes marriage counselors that only take cash. It includes everybody. But in the instance where, the physician is owned by a large health system and they don't allow them to take anything that's not hospital contracted, we'll go back to the member and say, "Hey, Lester, your physician's not accepting any new insurance payers at the moment. Here are your options. Option one is we can find you another doctor in your area, or option two is if you're absolutely married to that doctor and you got to see that doctor, then we recommend that you pay the cash rate, hang on to your receipt, and we'll walk you through how to get reimbursed minus your copay with the TPA later." So the advocacy is full stop. We're going to hold your hand through the entire process.
In that scenario, as the patient, the member, Lester in that example, I'm not paying anything more than I did before. And as the employer, I'm also not paying any more. There might be a process, like procedural differences, but as far as the cost, no one's telling me no, I can't do it. They're only saying no because Dr. Jones, him, her, or herself, and the organization that they work with decided that they don't want to take anything else. So that's their choice. But even at the end of the day, at the end of that rainbow, I could still go pay cash and then submit it for reimbursement.
Correct. Correct. And going back to your comment about being in an open enrollment meeting earlier, the way this goes really well is you lower the employee contributions, you lower the employee out of pockets. The employer still saves tons of money. So now the employee is willing to go through that extra process of engaging our advocacy team or paying cash and getting reimbursed later in a worst case scenario, because they might be saving two, three, $400 a month in their premiums. I mean, I've seen scenarios where, I made a truck driver cry in an open enrollment meeting one time because, he's walking into open enrollment thinking he's about to get told his premiums just went up by 10%. Well, come to find out, he had his whole family on the plan, and the family rate in our program was gonna go down by $700 compared to the PPO that they were gonna be on. And so this burly looking truck driver who looked like he rode in on a Harley Davidson, at first he thought I was lying to him, and then he literally broke down in tears when I told him that he was about to start saving $700 a month. So those are the types of stories that we enjoy telling.
Yeah, and again, I go back to the definition of insanity, right? Like, of course, we have to change something in order to achieve that thing that hasn't been able to be achieved, which is we're getting double-digit rate increases over here. We want to stop that. We can't think as an industry, as an employer, as an advisor, as a person, that we can continue to do the same things that we did yesterday and just expect them to knock down, in that example, $700 a month. Like, it's foolish for us to think that there isn't going to be change. So you've got two options: continue reading the same book, pick up a new book.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of become a benefits nerd, if you will. And so I read a lot of the trend studies that come out on employee benefits and healthcare and things like that. And the one thing I always find in those things is when you survey employees, number one, they care about what's coming out of their check by far. And then number two is how much do they have to pay when they need to use the system? How much are their copays to see the doctor? And how much is their deductible and their maximum out of pocket? Those are the two things they care about the most. And then maybe third, fourth, or fifth is who the actual insurance carrier is.
Right.
So, I mean, we can solve for those first two things in a major way.
Yeah, I mean, nobody raises their hand and says, "Oh my god." I mean, and check the NPS scores, right, of the major insurance companies. So, like, people might say that they love Blue Cross, let's just use an example, but what people are saying really, because they don't understand that health care and health insurance are two totally different things. They care that Dr. Jones is in the network, what comes out of their paycheck, and what they have to pay at time of care. Those 3 things, and you could solve for each and one of those things, and head to head the answer is gonna be better over here in your model than in any other model because of just the way the mechanism is. So, like, again, it's a different way of getting to grandma's house. It might take a couple more curves, but the view once you get to grandma's house is gonna be amazing.
Right. Right.
So I wanna continue. So now I can go to Dr. Jones. I had this process where somebody was gonna talk to Dr. Jones and make this. So now I go to Dr. Jones, and now it's time to leave Dr. Jones and go to another place, right? It might be an imaging center, it might be to go get the surgery, it might be to go do this. Talk to me about how me as the patient, the member, navigates the rest of that healthcare outside of Dr. Jones, which PS is probably only the 20% of the overall claim. So from a volume perspective, this is by far you handle the docs. This side of the house is far less frequent, but talk to me about navigating that piece of it.
Yeah, so let's use your early example of a knee surgery. So you go see Dr. Jones, he says you need a knee surgery. He has admitting rights at two or three different places around town. He's probably going to be the one choosing where you have your surgery done. So in the pre-cert process, typically what we're going to do is we're going to let claims flow, meaning we're not going to proactively reach out to the hospital to say, hey, we have somebody coming in and um, we need to work something out contractually. What we do is we let the pre-cert process play out. Typically what's happening is the patient intake people want to verify eligibility and benefits so that they can get a procedure scheduled. And if they do that, great. We'll let the member go have their procedure. If something happens in the pre-cert process for that knee surgery where the patient intake person says, hey, I don't know what this insurance is, or hey, we're not contracted with this particular payer, we either need to collect the upfront charges from the patient, or we need to work out a single case agreement. ClaimDoc has a full provider relations team on staff. We've got a team of 10. Our head of provider relations is a former hospital executive, so he knows exactly how the game works at every level. We will immediately enter into a negotiation with the hospital to say, "Hey, look, we're an open access program. There's no network attached. Here's how we typically pay providers. If that payment is not acceptable to you guys, then tell us, where an acceptable rate would fall, and we'll work out a what we call a single case agreement or a single patient agreement to make sure that there's no delay in care or we don't have to redirect to another facility." Some of the
Percentages there because, hey, how many times does it just flow through the system? Nothing else happens. It happened. Nobody would ever know anything. What out of 100 facility-based claims, how many of them just flow through the system?
um, well, that's hard to say because there's various types of facility claims. So emergency room, 100%, right? There's no problems with the emergency room because they've got to take you. For like outpatient procedures, I'm just guessing here, but I would say probably 85% of those flow through, no problems, prior to care being rendered. And then, so now you're looking at 15% of the ones where we have some friction and we've got to get something done. Hopefully, the provider didn't wait till the day before the surgery to get it pre-certed, which they often do. So oftentimes our provider relations team is on the phone at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time, trying to make sure that there's a contract in place for an 8 a.m. surgery the next day. Those are stressful situations. They happen. We're really good about jumping on those, and that's not something you see value in until it happens to you as a plan, but it does happen. Um, so yeah, so in the 15% of those scenarios, I'd say 8 or 9 out of 10 of those get worked out with no steerage needed or no delay in care needed. And so now you're dealing with, 1 or 2% of the planned procedures where we've either gotta tell the member, "Hey, look, I know this sucks, but we've gotta push your surgery back a week," or, "Hey, we've gotta call your doctor and get him to funnel this surgery to another facility because the facility that he was gonna do the surgery at isn't willing to play ball with us."
And Omar, maybe we take this Omar's own opinion, and then maybe we could sort out some marketplace stats. I remember the when I first started, in this whole alternative space, the rumor of RBP was always like, screw you, hospital, scorched earth. We're gonna pay you something that you're not gonna love, and just eat it, or we'll see you kind of in court. Uh, I want to get your general opinion in regards to now and the new model and the model that you do every day of that original payment that you wanted to pay. So, like, how is that being calculated? And if we use the word fair, where does that rank in the fairness? And I know that's a matter of opinion, but hey, this is live TV. We're good with it, buddy. We're good with it.
Conversation has just been hijacked.
That's
Can
okay.
you say hi? They just got home from the trampoline park. "Hey, I'm in the middle of a call, okay, buddy? I'm working, okay? Okay? You gotta go."
Bye.
Talk about that, man.
That's okay. Hey, live TV. We love it. That's good.
That's my middle child who doesn't obey any of the rules. He does his own thing.
Hey, I wonder where he got that from, Omar. I wonder where he got that. So back to that fair word, like, when you think about, like, what you guys are wanting to pay, when you outline, like, "Hey, this is the procedure, we're gonna pay $1," talk to me about that fairness word.
Yeah, yeah, fair is subject to change based on who you're talking to, correct?
Yep.
So the way we price, facility claims standard is we look at, 2 different metrics. The metrics are Medicare and cost. We look at Medicare plus a 25% markup. We look at the hospital's own self-reported costs and a 20% markup. Whichever of those 2 methods is higher, that's how we pay the facility. And what cost is every hospital that accepts Medicare has to submit their cost of services to CMS. And if you think about that practically, if you're a business and you've got to report your cost of services to the government so they can use that report to then decide how they're going to pay you on Medicare or Medicaid patients, you're going to submit a fully loaded cost, right? You're not
Right, you're
skimming
not
that cost
skimping.
down.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's everything, right? So when you say we're going to pay at a minimum your fully loaded cost plus a 20% markup, we think that's a pretty fair starting point.
So, and I'm trying to think about this, right? Like, if I've got cost, I run a business, right? I've
Yeah.
got cost, and again, assuming that cost includes all of the expenses to render that service. So we might, even say and compare that to. That's essentially what we start talking about as, EBITDA, from a scenario. A 20% margin, maybe it's not a tech company at 50, 60 company. But if we think about that in line with a lot of other services, I mean, you ask a senior living company or a staffing company, if they could get 20% margins, they would, jump through the roof for it. Yeah. So, but again, from that fairness standpoint, it is starting with a point that is, let's talk about the T word, transparent, right? There is some level of basis to what is that number. In the old worlds, that build charge is completely subjective, made up by the hospital. There is no validity there. When that starts to come into play, in, let's just call it, legality standpoint, talk to me about, and again, not that this is a litigious conversation, but at some point this is a trying to come up with what is fair. Talk to me about how you guys look at using those benchmarks to ensure that you are being fair.
Yeah, I mean, what we strive for as far as reimbursements to facilities is we want our reimbursement to be sandwiched right along the mean between the commercial payers and the government payers, right? It's really hard for and going back, we're talking about cost plus a 20% markup. Well, that's great for your business, and you're a for-profit entity, I would assume. Most hospitals in this country are nonprofit hospitals. So let's start there. We want our reimbursements to be right along the middle in between the government payers and the commercial payers, because then it's really hard for a nonprofit health system to tell us that we're paying them unfairly when we're paying them well above what their biggest payer is paying them.
I often think about this. If everybody would sit through a real life conversations around that, like, the whole world would change, right? As like, great, what are we really talking about there? So
Yeah.
from that, communication education, then I want to go into, kind of the second feature of this audit. From the communication education to the member, um, w- what is it, and are you finding that by having a bigger boy, bigger girl conversation, a more, sophisticated, like, hey, this is real. Like, there, you have a say in how much the organization pays for healthcare. What kind of things are you having communication education around? And like, do you see that those are moving the needles to truly being able to help people become better consumers in this overall game?
We think so. So you can think of ClaimDoc as outside of an RVP company, we are akin to a full-blown open enrollment firm. Like, we do everything an open enrollment company would do, with the exception of we don't have the people power to sit down and do one-on-one counselor driven meetings. But as far as, group meetings, virtual or in person, pre-enrollment educational videos or in-person meetings, marketing flyers in like paper form or online, stored in a company intranet somewhere, or video communication that gets plugged into corporate communications. I mean, it's a custom approach per client based on what the consultant and the benefits folks want to do. But we are absolutely all hands on deck to make sure that everybody in the company knows what's going on and who they can lean on for help. Because again, if you don't do that, it can go sideways. And so our implementation people have a standard cadence that they use to communicate with HR through the implementation process, but then also how we drip market onto the members of the plan throughout the plan year. So we've got a full-blown implementation team and a marketing team that helps with, our marketing team isn't just outbound sales-driven marketing, it's internal client communications as well.
And we use the word hard, or we use the word, could go sideways, but at the end of the day, it's choose your hard, right? One of them is trying to prevent these absorbent amount of double-digit rate increases from the existence of time. The other side of it is, okay, I'm not teaching people how to be better healthcare consumers. I'm letting them do whatever the heck they want. I'm going to let them continue to put their hand on a hot stove, and the result of that is an average family cost that's more than a car at this point, right? So, like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, as somebody who's experienced this, like, it's choose your heart. Like, there's no other word about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's anymore for a family premium, it's not even a car, it's a house now.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's
it's unreal.
yeah. So that's a good point. You choose what kind of hard you want. I get it. And
So good.
I was just gonna say, going back to what you said about, like senior living, like lower margin businesses, those people really understand what we're doing because
Well, they run their whole business off of Medicare.
exactly, exactly.
Right, right. They're like, I only get a dollar. You're paying talking about a dollar 20, a dollar 40. Like this makes a lot of sense.
Well, and depending on what type of provider you are and what state you're in, different states run their Medicare programs differently. So there's what they call managed care organizations that are incentivized to pay certain types of providers less than Medicare because they're hanging on to some of that federal money coming in.
Right,
So it's a racket,
right,
as you know.
right. I want to talk about the audit feature because I find it so fascinating. And fascinating with a bad word, right? Like fascinating in like what percentage of bills actually come with errors, and that 95% of the time, not even 95, like basically 100% of the time in the normal model, that is just flowing through the system and nobody's even watching or paying attention to me. Talk to me about audit and what is it? How vast are the errors? And like, what comes out of the rainbow on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, you've sat through the full presentation with our lead auditor, Cynthia Swanson, who does a great job. Yeah, I could talk to you for an hour just about the audit because I'll get on a high horse about all the things that go on, and all the fraud, waste, abuse, corruption, whatever you want to call it. But these health systems have multi-million dollar software packages, and part of those software packages are billing packages that are there to help ensure that the hospital maximizes their revenue on each patient that walks through the door, right? And there is no one on the other side to double check that. And what I mean by that is the carriers or the carrier-owned networks have no incentive to manage costs for their customers because their profit margins are regulated through the Affordable Care Act. And you know this, but many people who are listening maybe don't know this. But when the carrier's only means for profit is increased premiums for all of their customers, then they don't care what the hospitals bill. They're either going to pass that claim on to a self-funded employer or they're going to pass that premium increase on to a fully insured plan. And that's why you see double digit trend in our industry. Um, and so it's getting into this role I have with ClaimDoc and learning more about how our audit unfolds. It's just sort of astonishing to see some of the things we uncover without even repricing claims to Medicare, just pulling things off of the bill that shouldn't have been in there in the first place. The example I always talk about is ICU charges. Obviously, if you're in the intensive care unit, it's a pretty serious problem you're having, and ICU rates are supposed to be a bundled per diem, all in, part and parcel rate. And I recently heard that we've seen ICU charges up to $80,000 a day. Okay. Stanford Hospital in California will charge you 80 grand a day to be in their ICU. And that's one thing. That's fine. If they're worth 80 grand a day, so be it. I won't even argue over the rate. But when that's supposed to be an all in per diem And then some hospitals are unbundling the services that are happening in the ICU. And this went on a lot during COVID. They were unbundling the oxygen treatments and the ventilator treatments and the ECMO, and sometimes even the nursing services were being unbilled or unbundled in these large ICU claims for COVID patients. So we were seeing claims that should have been billed at 200-300 grand. Now they're being billed at 2-3 million dollars. So we go back to the plan and say, hey, we know you're getting charged 20 grand a day for the ICU stay, but we don't know what that's getting you other than room and board because they unbundled every other service. And now it hit some outlier in the PPO contract. So you think your discount's 50%, but it's only 15%. And this goes on in every commercial plan with every carrier. And I mean, to me, it's one of the biggest untold stories out there, but it's, we get some attention on our standalone bill review product, but that audit process that we implement, we do it on every single facility claim for our RBP customers because we do take a fiduciary role with the plan sponsor, and so it's our duty under federal ERISA law to manage plan assets to the best of our ability, and our audit is a big piece of that.
So, if we were using this medium, right? You and I have the microphone right now. A question that every employer should be asking themselves is, does your plan today audit for the claims that are running through it? And when most of the time those audits are paid for in a contingency basis, like most organizations are getting a percentage of that savings. So if they don't save you anything, you don't pay anything. Is there a reason for an employer not to look at this and be like, an audit of my plan and the 85 cents on the dollar that's going to pay claims, can that ever be viewed as a negative thing?
I don't see how it is, but you'd be shocked at the pushback you'll get when you try to get in there and audit claims, network claims, because, um, the administrator doesn't want you to see them because they're worried they're gonna lose their network contract. The network is owned by the carrier, so they certainly don't want you to see the itemized bill. The hospital certainly doesn't want you to look under the hood, and so you get pushback when you try to do this on a one-off basis. Um, but I think with some of the litigation that's gone on recently, I think there's gonna be a bigger push for plans of all types to start, receiving itemization on every claim and doing these types of third-party reviews.
So let's dive into that. I call it the F word, right? The fiduciary word. And the litigation that you were talking about is underneath the. I'm going to say new. It's not necessarily new, but it's starting to become mainstream, right? The CAA, the Consolidated Appropriations Act. So when you think about this, we often have a conversation of crawl, walk, run when it becomes a cost conversation. Hey, using a PPO, is kind of crawling all the way to RBP. Now you're starting to pull all these levers and maximize the savings per unit. But when we think about crawl, walk, run, we also can think about it from a compliance standpoint and say, if we're running on the savings side and using RBP, we're also running on the compliance side too. That when you are paying off of a basis point of a defendable, transparent number and can see every dollar of claims that's happening, you are being the highest level of fiduciary. Talk to me about y'all's, stake in that conversation about fiduciary and that responsibility and how you've designed the program to be able to support an employer about that.
Yeah, so we do take a fiduciary liability with every plan we bring on our books. So we write ourselves into the plan documents. We use some amended plan language that says not only will we be a fiduciary to the plan, but we'll protect plan members from any sort of predatory billing practices that happen at the provider level. And so when it comes to having a program that's buttoned up and designed to save a plan money, but also deliver quality member experience, it all starts with that audit because one of the unique things that we do that no one else does that I'm aware of is we send our audit to the provider, certified mail. It's got appeal instructions in it as well as the hospital's own self-reported financials. So let's go back to that ICU example we just used. There's a large ICU claim. We audit it, we reprice it, we send that packet certified mail to the hospital based on their NPI number. So it's going to their billing department. They look at that and they say, oh, these people didn't just auto adjudicate our claim and pay us. They actually looked at the claim, looked at the itemization of the claim. They denied certain things that shouldn't have been in there in the first place. They paid what was left, and there's appeal instructions right there. So if they feel that they weren't paid fairly for any reason, we're happy to hear the appeal, and we would take on the appeal on behalf of the plan. And so that level of detail builds credibility with the providers as well. So now if the provider chooses to bill a member, we get notified of that bill and we act immediately. We'll send a notice to the same address where we sent the audit report that basically says, "Hey guys, you received our audit report, you received appeal instructions, you cashed the check from the TPA, the plan has been paid in accordance with the plan documents, so you can't chase our member down for more money, but if you want to appeal, we're happy to still hear that appeal." And so that's kind of the circle of how claims flow and how we drive savings, but also protecting our members in the process. Because now it's on the hospital to tell us why they deserve more money or why they weren't paid fairly on that claim. So
And again, in that scenario, that's a protection of plan assets, which is beneficial to the employer and the member themselves. Like, I remember when I blew out my knee and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna MRI your hip." And I'm like, "Well, why are you MRIing my hip? I hurt my knee." And they're like, "Oh, sometimes when you have blunt trauma, you blah blah blah." And I was like, I don't think I want, is it gonna, oh, so I asked her, "Is this gonna change the course of treatment?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "So why are you gonna do it? You're not gonna," and they're like, "Are you a med school student?" I'm like, "No, I'm on a high deductible. I got $7,000 out of pocket. This is coming straight out of my pocket." But like, in most scenarios, the consumer, right? The people that are on the plans, touching these plans, they don't ask any of these questions. They don't even look at the itemized bill. And when we think about it from how many people can't afford to actually use their plan to what renewal increases look and what the overall cost of healthcare is in this nation. I mean, this is one of those low hanging fruits that says, we're not asking anybody to even be a better consumer. We're just saying at the end of the day, we're just going to do and make sure that that hospital, inadvertently, on purpose, or any other degree of it, didn't make a mistake on the thing that is costing our employees and employer to pay a significant amount of money. It seems so logical.
yeah, it's makes so much sense that it rarely gets done.
Right. I mean, I think about it like, I went to the grocery store yesterday and I checked out and they gave me an itemized bill and I get to like look at it and be like, I bought all of these things and that is the price. I mean, that's all we're basically saying in this game. Healthcare, maybe outside of like being a mechanic, like healthcare is one of those other only things that like you walk in, you have no idea what it is that you're going to pay. You actually end up paying something and you have no idea whether you feel good about paying that number or not.
Yeah,
This is a way to kind of have that validation.
it is, and that's sort of the duty that we take on is we don't want our plans or our plan members to pay a single penny more than they're supposed to.
Very logical thing. Let's end this in a real life story. Talk to me about how this personifies itself out to a real employer.
Yeah, timely that you're asking this because I got an email from a broker this morning about a case that he was running some analysis on. It's a agricultural company out of California, about 300 employees on the plan. They were a 10/1 effective date of last year, so they renewed with us, and the broker was working on maturing up the claims and doing some reporting for the client. And what he found was that of a 300 employee group, blue collar agriculture, they saved $1.6 million in year one. Their stop loss renewal was minus 10.1%. Their balance bill rate was 0. So there was 0 known balance bills with over 2,000 claims processed. Um, What else? Their cost per employee per month went from I've got it right here. Their cost per covered employee was, um, went from $819 to $480 PEPM, so that's a 41.4% overall reduction in plan spend. They had 3 access issues for the entire year, so we talked about some of the single case agreements that we do and disruption at point of service. One of those scenarios was a chiropractor that didn't take insurance. The other one, was another type of, I think, marriage counselor or some sort of therapist that only took cash. And then the third one was, a surgery that wasn't going that did a last second pre-cert. I think we had to delay the care, push the surgery back a few days, which let's be honest, that happens on PPOs as well sometimes. Certainly happens on Medicare patients all the time. And so I think we had to bump the surgery back a few days, but the surgery ultimately happened. It went fine. So we got all 3 of the quote unquote access issues resolved. And so you look at no balance bills, very few access issues, and a 41.4% reduction in overall plan spend. It's like people should be beating our doors down to do business with us. We shouldn't even have to have a sales team.
And let's call the spade in this conversation. Agriculture, probably English second language.
Yep.
You've got a bunch of people who make very little money. So, when you think about just to say a $5,000 out of pocket, you know, on somebody who's making 50, $60,000 a year, I mean, we're talking 10, 15% of someone's net take home pay. And now this next year, the employer is able to give them equal to, if not better benefits at a cheaper cost, which, by the way, from a recruitment retention standpoint is what it is that we're trying to do. So, but it takes that courage to leave that status quo. And sometimes, unfortunately, and you and I joked about this, before, it's like we tend to be like, in case of an emergency, break glass. Like I tried every other thing, and now I'm coming to you, please help me, as opposed to like people thinking about this proactively as a
Exactly.
true tool to manage their second or third largest expense. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of it is the consulting world as well. They're scared of it. Maybe they got burned by a bad vendor in the past, or maybe they just want to continue to hit the easy button because they're making good money or whatever. But I think a lot of it is, and to be fair to consultants, they've got hundreds of vendors coming at them all the time, so it's hard to really vet the market and know what's real and what isn't. And so it's a combination of things. But I think the tide is certainly shifting. I mean, 41.4% reduction in spend, that's pretty astounding, and that's not Omar, the sales guy's feeding you some BS number. That's not my number, that's coming directly from the consultant. So those numbers are very, very real.